Hey all, welcome to our first episode of How to Structure Your Training with StrengthLab360. I'm Karl, the head coach for StrengthLab360, and I'm going to take you through the first question that will arise when you consider how you should structure your training. The first question is whether you should train for strength or hypertrophy. Obviously, it's a very individual decision and it should align with your goals. So the main difference between strength and hypertrophy is in strength training, you will go to the gym and you will train bench press, for example, because that's where you want to improve your strength. If you go to the gym in an hypertrophy environment, you will train chest because you want to increase the size of your chest muscle. There are significant other differences as well, such as strength training will typically focus on lower reps and much more weight, whereas hypertrophy usually focuses on volume and not so much on the weight. If I would have a client who wants to focus on strength, aka increase their bench press, for example, I would make sure that they always increase the weight, because you also want to have that neurological adaptation. If I have someone who just wants to increase the muscle size, I would make sure that I focus primarily on the volume and not so much on the weight. If they miss a weight, it's not the end of the world. We can significantly drop the weight and increase the reps because we're not that much after the neurological adaptations of things. Obviously, a strength training program will also build muscle, and a hypertrophy program will also build some strength. But if you really want to push your bench press, for example, you want to push your squat, your deadlift, you're more likely to benefit from a specific strength training plan. And if you want to simply increase the size of your muscles whilst have small gains in strength as well, but primarily want to focus on the size of your muscles, you will go for a hypertrophy style training plan. In strength training, typically you have anywhere from 1 to 8 reps, and the amount of reps per set will decrease whilst the weight moves up in order to allow for lower volume towards the end of the training plan and higher weight again for that neurological adaptation. You will most likely have slightly longer rests in between your sets of about 3 to 5 minutes. And you will typically, again, as I said earlier, you will have a bench press day where you will start off with the bench press, if that's the one that you want to improve. And then you will supplement that with exercises that are similar to the bench press, such as an incline bench press, and exercises that will focus on weak points related to bench press. For example, if your triceps is weak, you will also train your triceps. In comparison, for a hypertrophy training plan, you will select your training plan, and the first order of business is to make sure that your volume, firstly for your session, so that is the amount of sets times the amount of reps, is right for the session, and as well as right for the week. So it's a more volume-focused approach to training and not so much on the weight. And you don't decrease the volume whilst increasing the weight significantly. You try to always increase the overall workload, of course, because you want to have progressive overload, but you don't push the weights to crazy weights more than 85% or 90% of your 1 rep max. Whereas in strength training, you will push your weights to close to your 1 rep max in order to exceed your 1 rep max at the end of a strength training plan. A hypertrophy training plan will have a mix of metabolic stress as well as mechanical stress. Metabolic stress meaning more reps will lead to the accumulation of lactate, and mechanical stress meaning the actual stress the weight places upon your muscles and your overall system. And we want to have both of those factors of stress, but we're going to focus on making sure there's the metabolic stress as well. That's why for a hypertrophy training plan, we tend to have rest periods at around 90 90 seconds, because we want to get that metabolic stress as well. Whereas in strength training, we are very much focused on the mechanical stress through the load of the weight, and not so much on the metabolic stress for the primary movement. Of course, if we get down to exercises like the triceps and supplemental exercises or accessory work, we will also increase the amount of reps in order to elicit a metabolic response, but not for the prime movement. But we do also have some sort of element of metabolic stress in the strength training, because there are various advantages to increased lactate levels as well. So what does that mean for you? You want to choose strength or hypertrophy. Decide what you want. Do you want strong muscles or do you want big muscles? Neither training style will eliminate the aspects of the other one, but you should for yourself make the decision, do I want to get stronger by sacrificing a little bit of potential muscle gain, or do I want to have muscle gain by potentially being less strong? Once you have come to the conclusion, you have picked what is right for you. And one thing I'd like to mention for an absolute beginner, so someone who's never trained before, personally, I would always recommend a hypertrophy plan, because it will allow you to learn the techniques. It will allow you to build some coordination, because if you've never held a barbell in your hands for bench press, a very big limiting factor will be your stability. So I would always recommend to start off with a hypertrophy training plan if you've never touched the weight before. And then if you, after 4 to 6 weeks, you can feel you kind of nailed the technique and your stabilization has become better, then you can switch. If you say you really want to push your bench press, you want to push your squat, you want to push your deadlift, then you can switch to a strength-focused training plan. And that's how I would make the choice for myself, whether I want to train strength or hypertrophy.